Eyes on Longmont, offering a diversity of topics about our community that will inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy this edition of Eyes on Longmont.
Hello, my name is Ning. Thank you for coming to my exhibition. Please come in. Hi, my name is Ning Mosberger, Tang. I'm a photographer here based in Boulder. I took a somewhat unusual path to become a photographer. I grew up in the southeastern part of China. Both of my parents were math teachers. So I was very attracted to math and science when I was growing up. So I ended up getting a degree in computer science. After college, I came to the US for graduate school, and my subject area was again computer science. After I graduated with a master's degree, I worked in the tech industry for more than a dozen years. About 10 years ago, my husband and we decided that we want to have a lifestyle change, and we decided to move to Colorado. While in Colorado, I stopped working for a while. I was able to travel pretty widely, and I had the opportunity to meet up with some really fascinating people, and they helped me discover my passion in photography.
Tell us how and why you became a photographer.
The path to become a photographer, let me think about that. It's interesting. I have three major events that led to my career of a photographer. First, I took a photography workshop in San Francisco with Catherine Cano, and that was 8 years ago. In the workshop, Catherine really taught me how to see the light. And as you know, the light is basically the most important element in photography. So Catherine really helped me get started to become more serious in photography. And then about 5 years ago, I did a personal project, which is to create photos every day. And then at the end of the day, I went through my photos and I narrowed down to a single shot, which I will then share that on my blog. And that's called a special year blog. Anyway, I kept that for an entire year. It was actually a lot of work, much more work than I had anticipated. But I learned a lot through the experience. I learned a lot. I learned how to pay attention to every detail, to the nuance in the moments, and to basically try to capture something in everyday life. And the third event that led to my photography career was, again, related to Catherine Cano. I took a workshop of hers in Italy, Umbria, Italy. It was a very interesting experience. I remember the last day of the workshop was a big festival. It's called Mata Festival that took place in Mata, Italy. And we had thousands of people on the street, and people who are all dressed up in their traditional costumes, and they walk with very beautiful floats, and they chanted and they basically carry on for the entire day. It's quite a festival. I was at the time I was carrying 2 cameras on me. I had a reporter's badge, and I was just so happy taking photos up and down the parade. I was on my feet for probably a good 6 hours. At the end of the day, I have 3,000 photos in my camera, which was a record for me. And I just, one moment in the festival, I just had this epiphany. I said, oh, I'm so happy. I was in a flow. And then at that point, I realized that I was meant to be a photographer. And I know that's what I want to do for the rest of my life.
What type of photography do you do?
I enjoy taking photos of pretty much anything that caught my eye, anything that seemed to have a meaning. So I took photos of people, of street, of places, of landscape. And at the end, I chose a set of photos that would tell a cohesive story. And I guess my interest is in storytelling through photography.
Who is your primary mentor?
My photography mentor is Catherine Connell. She is a National Geographic photographer, and she has shot for them for more than 25 years for the magazine and also for the Travelers magazine. I spent quite some time with her, and I really enjoy her photos. In all her photos, every one of them, I see illuminating night, and I think that's not just what she was capturing, it's also, in a way, it reflects her personality. I think it's herself. I got to know her very well over the past 8 years, and we have spent some time together, and we have had we have exchanged emails in the past 2 years, probably hundreds of them, related to photography. And I just, through her photography and through Catherine's personality, I just realized something really important, which is that photography reflects the photographer more than anything else. It's, in a way, your photos tell a lot about you. And I think in a way, the photographer may be able to hide behind the camera, but you cannot hide behind your photos. There's just no way, you just can't.
Who are your other mentors?
My other photography mentors would be people like Henry Cartier-Bresson, Alex Webb. I really enjoy the documentary photography genre. And I just really appreciate the way they capture the decisive moments, and they somehow were able to capture the nuances in all these individual moments. And I also really admire documentary photographers like Dorothy Lang and Sebastian Salado, because I really see the humanity in their photos.
What photography equipment do you use?
I use a very simple photography setup. I have a Nikon DSLR camera, full-frame camera, and right now I have a Nikon D750. And then with that, I use a Leica 24 to 85 millimeter lens, and that's probably where I did 99% of my photography. I have other cameras and lenses, but I don't use them as much anymore because I feel like my simple setup with Nikon camera and that particular lens is just, it's flexible and lightweight and portable, and I could do all I want with it, most I want with it.
How do you share your work with others?
I share my work through social media, mostly through Instagram and Facebook. And I also share my photo through this current exhibition in Longman's darkroom gallery.
Where do you go from here?
Where do I want to go from here for photography? I really enjoy learning new things about photography. My personal goal is to try to make progress every day, every week, every year, to get better I would like to get better with photography, and I would like to also capture the moments, capture the. I want to do a long time projects. For example, right now I have two projects that really interest me, and one of them is about ranches in Colorado, because my older daughter, she's 13 now, and my older daughter, Jasmine, she's very interested in horses, horseback riding and whatnot. So we spend a lot of time in ranches in the Boulder area. So when she is working with horses, I take photos. So that's one. The other project I'm interested in right now is related to the environment. I can't say a lot about that right now, but I hope I have some photos to share very soon.
At the Darkroom Gallery.
Hi, Ning. It's so great to see you again today. And this exhibit has been so amazing. And since this is the last day, it's appropriate that we hear a little bit more about it. So can you tell everybody what the exhibit is about?
Sure, yeah. It's good to see you again, Julie. Thank you so much for hosting this exhibition. I love this space. So this exhibition is about Vietnam. I went to Vietnam last October. I spent a couple of weeks there. And what I learned about Vietnam in the trip was just incredible. Before my visit, I thought Vietnam is a very poor country with a lot of misery, dirt roads, and hardworking peasants. And I was just expecting to see a lot of poverty. But what I saw there was so different from what I have imagined before. And I would like to share that with the American audience. And that's actually the motivation of my exhibition.
Yeah, and I've heard that from so many of the people who've seen the exhibit, that they had no idea that this is what Vietnam looked like. And your exhibit has actually inspired many people to want to make trips to Vietnam, including myself. So just
thank you.
Incredible images. And really, this is one of my favorite exhibits that we've had here at the gallery. So
I'm so glad to hear that.
Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, that was my intention to bring part of Vietnam over to America, so that people will know what Vietnam actually looks like in the present date. And I was hoping that it would inspire people to go visit. And even if they cannot, for some reason, because they have time or whatever, then at least they will still see a part of it through the exhibition.
Yeah.
So thank you for making this possible. I really appreciate that.
Of course. And I know this is your first exhibition, so it was pretty exciting for both of us to, get it all set up, and it was a lot of work. But I think we've touched so many people, you've touched so many people with your work, that it was all worth it. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, this is my first exhibition. Even though I have traveled to many places, and some of them are very beautiful. And for example, like Switzerland, Iceland, but it never occurred to me that I would do an exhibition. But the first week, even before the first week ended in Vietnam, I knew I was going to do an exhibition about that country. It's just because my impression was like, wow, I mean, it's so different, and it's touched my heart so deeply. I really want to share, my impressions with the people. And I'm so glad that it happened, After a year of preparations, and we worked together to get all these prints out and set things up in the gallery, but it's all worth it.
It is worth it. Mm-hmm. And I understand that you're getting ready to go to Cuba, so yes. I'm hoping that you come back with some awesome photos from Cuba, and we can do a Cuba exhibition maybe sometime next year.
Oh, let's hope so. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And another thing I love about this show is, I know the viewers can't see this part of it right now, but in this room we're showing the culture and the people and the beauty, and in the other room is the terrible effects of Agent Orange. And we've had so many Vietnam veterans come in to see the exhibit, and we're so touched by it. And we've also been able to raise a lot of money for your nonprofit, the Children of Vietnam. So it's just all in all, it's just a wonderful show.
Oh, thank you.
So this is the last day of the exhibition at the dark room. And then we move every exhibit from the dark room to Bin 46 Wine Bar, which is just down the street at 600 Longs Peak Avenue. So later today, we're going to be moving it down there. And we're really excited that a whole new group of people are going to be able to see it. So that's going to be up there through the end of December 2016. And then what are your plans after that?
It sounds like the timing is great because that's the Christmas season and people might go to the restaurant and might enjoy the show and maybe even buy prints. And my part of the proceeds will go to support the Vietnamese children and family through Children of Vietnam. So I think that would be a nice thing to do for the holidays as well. After this exhibition and after Bin 46, I am hoping to find some other venues here in Boulder area and maybe even in Denver. I have a few leads and I have some invitations. So I hope you stay in this area for a while. And then after that, I would like to return to Vietnam and then I'll add more photos to my exhibition portfolio. And then after that, I hope to bring the exhibition to some other states and cities like San Francisco, San Jose, California area.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Very
reach more
exciting.
people.
Great.
Yeah.
What do you think Vietnamese people think about Americans?
That's the really interesting question because a lot of Americans, they're afraid that when they're going to visit Vietnam, then people will have some memories of the war. And of course, it was a terrible war and a lot of people were affected. But what I saw there was completely the opposite. You know, Vietnam is a very has a very young population. More than 70% of the people there, they were born after the war. And I think in nationally, people are just very forward-looking, and they're very forgiving, and they look at Americans as partners and investors, and not just not adversaries at all.
Oh, good.
And if you go there with a good intention, and you know that Americans help them with business, and some Americans help the local people socially, so they know that if you come with good intentions, that the Vietnamese will welcome Americans with open arms. Yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear. Well, maybe we can walk around and you can talk about some of your favorite photographs and the stories behind them.
Sure.
Okay. So, Ning, why don't you tell us about a few of your favorite photos and the stories behind them?
Sure. So actually, one of my very favorite photo is that one. It's a photo of a photo shoot, basically. This is at Hai Vang Pass. It's along the coastline between Hue and Hoi An in central Vietnam. It's such a beautiful place. A lot of couples came up there to have their wedding photos taken. So as you can see, in this photo, we have a couple right there. They're all dressed up and they are doing their wedding photo shoot there. There's a wedding photographer who is just right across from them on top of a roof, taking pictures of them. And the interesting thing for me was that this couple they are standing on top of a war bunker. That's a war bunker. And this is a ladder lady who was in charge of moving the ladders around and moving, basically she will set up the ladder so the couple can go up and get their photos taken and just take them off when they are being photographed. So I thought the whole scene was very interesting. And on top of that, there's a whole group of other couples. They are standing in line waiting for their turn to make it up there. So that was a very unusual. I thought that's something interesting to capture. And this is a photo I took in Ha Long Bay. This is on top of the. This is a picture I took in Ha Long Bay, in a floating village. And these people, they are fishermen. And usually they go out to work in the morning, and sometimes they work with the tourists, sometimes they go fishing. But right now, you can see they are taking a little break in the middle of the day. And what's interesting about this photo is that if you actually go into the so-called houses, if you go into their homes, floating on the water, you can see there was just basically, it's nothing. There's nothing there. And they have 4 walls, and then they have clothes, some clothes and covers, and that's pretty much it. And they don't have any furniture or anything that looks like you expect in a regular house. But they do have a cell phone which they use to entertain themselves and through videos, and I don't know what they're doing, watching there, but they're having a good time. And the man behind is busy fixing his boat. So I think that gives you an idea of a floating village in Halong Bay. So this photo was taken in a very remote pagoda close to Hue. It's called Konsong Pagoda. There are some monks who live there full-time, and then also there are some nuns visiting them at that time. And I spent pretty much the whole day there walking around, and we can't really communicate, but it was very interesting to see how they go through their day. So right now they're drinking the tea, and then the other guy is reading. I also spent some time watching them meditate, which they do about 5 times a day. It's a very interesting and a very quiet place, but you can see there's a lot of greenery outside the window. A very interesting story behind this is the head monk who started this pagoda, this monastery. He started with a completely barren hill. There used to be forest there, but because of the Vietnam War, all the forests were in this area were destroyed. But this head monk, he just found this spot, and he planted everything himself. Maybe he had some locals who help him, but over the course of 20, 30 years, he transformed this very barren land into a really incredible green sanctuary. So I thought that's very interesting. That was something that made the photo, kind of more interesting for me. As you can see in this photo, we have a French-style cathedral there. The reason it was there is because Vietnam was occupied by the French for 100 years, and the French left some of the cultural legacies there, which includes they have the coffee, they have baguettes, and they have some beautiful buildings, including this cathedral. And then in front of this cathedral, you see this peasant woman. She probably came from the countryside of Vietnam. She's probably very, very poor, and she was just there selling her vegetables, in the city. So I like the contrast in this photo in terms of different kind of cultures and different kind of lifestyle, and all of that seem to be working together in harmony within the same country. And the top photo there was taken in an elite school, a high school in Hue. It's apparently it's very hard to get into the school, so all these students are really very good students. And I happened to be there when they were preparing for a school performance. It was one of the performance rehearsals, I believe, and they were just dressed up in dance costume and walking into the theater right now. And this one is also taken somewhere close to Hue, and that is a restaurant. It's called Indochin. And what framed this photo in the front, it's It's one of the cyclones, which is cyclones are very popular in Vietnam for tourists to go around the city. What I like about this photo was that it has a lot of interching, some Chinese flavor to the facade of the restaurant. Also, you can see all the way through into almost the back window there of the restaurant, and there's a depth, and you see some other photos through the window, through the door. So Vietnam was occupied by China for over 1,000 years, and there was a lot of cultural legacy left from the Chinese period as well, and that includes, of course, the food, the cuisine influence, and within every Vietnamese home I visited, there is an ancestral altar in the home, which I believe it used to be a Chinese tradition. And I don't see that in China anymore, but I see that in Vietnam, which is very interesting. And the photo on the top was taken in Hue, inside a citadel. It's an imperial palace of Vietnam, and it's very similar to me, it's very similar to the Forbidden Palace in China. And it was a rainy day, so we saw this, nice young lady who is walking, under the umbrella. And I saw her from distance. I thought that would be an interesting photo. So on the top, we have another wedding photo at Hai Vang Pass. That is a couple who was having their photos taken. And I was with a few other people at the time, and we asked them whether it's okay for us to just follow them and take more photos. And they said, okay. And we followed them for probably about 15, 20 minutes. And that's something that really impressed me about our Vietnamese. They seem to be very open-minded when it comes to outside context, and they are very open-minded with strangers. And they really don't mind if you point a camera at them for 10, 15 minutes. And I just thought that's that shows a very, I think that really demonstrated their generosity in spirit, which I thought is I was very grateful about that as a photographer. This picture here is a woman in a very special neighborhood in Hanoi. The neighborhood is called Hang Thien neighborhood. It was completely destroyed during the war. They were completely bombed out, and it was rebuilt after the war. And as you can see, some of the buildings seem to be, not in a great shape right now. But the spirit of that lady standing in the courtyard hanging the laundry, I thought I thought there was something pretty remarkable about her. That she was dressed up, and she seemed to be very elegant and a very respectful person. And apparently it's just her regular, everyday dress, and she's just doing her laundry in the courtyard. So this is a photo that I took on a very small cruise boat. And that is in Halong Bay. Again, it's in Halong Bay. And this is a photo of some margarita that myself and my parents were drinking at that time. What's interesting about this photo is that this young woman, her name is Ning, she is super friendly. This young woman has a Chinese ancestry, so she can actually speak Mandarin. So she communicated with my parents in Mandarin, and they had a really a good time together and talked to each other for like over an hour. So I guess she was very happy that she was coming to serve us more food. So this young woman, she has a Chinese heritage, and she really built up a rapport with my parents when we spent our time on the boat. We spent 2 nights on the boat. This photo down here was taken in a courtyard of a fashion boutique. It was a very chic place to be, apparently. One thing special about this fashion boutique was that they hired a number of deaf and mute models. And these 2 models, they are not deaf and mute, but there are a few other ones who are equally beautiful and very elegant, but they are not able to, they cannot hear or cannot speak. It was very interesting that people with disabilities seem to get more and more accepted now in Vietnam. Instead of hiding them away, people are starting to reach out and give them opportunities to work, to make a living, and to become part of the society. Within the same, in this clothing boutique, they also hired a number of tailors who make all the fancy clothes there. They hired tailors who were also deaf and mute. And all of them are right now, in this photo, they're working upstairs. And I did spend some time, with them. And it was kind of a very eerie, very quiet space because people don't talk, because they can't talk. And it's just very quiet, everybody's focused on their work. But I think they're happy. They were happy that they have a job. And I think that's a good thing, yeah. So this photo was taken in the courtyard in the intermission of a fashion show. And these 2 people in the middle, they are customers. And these 2 girls there, they are the fashion models. And they're just spending some time mingle with each other in the backyard. And just having a fun social time. So that's a photo I took actually from inside the bus that was taking me from, it was near Haiphong. It's near Haiphong. It was, I was inside the bus going to Ha Long Bay. I noticed a lot of Vietnamese people wear face masks. I think partly I think it's the pollution. The air close to the big cities like Hanoi is pretty polluted. Yeah, I hope something could be done to the factories, because I know more and more factories are moving over from China to Vietnam now because of the lower labor costs. But I hope the government will be paying more attention to control the pollution, so that all these beautiful cities won't be polluted. On the top photo was taken in an alley of Hanoi. Something interesting about Hanoi is that there are a lot of wires lying around in the city, in the alleys, on the street. Sometimes you see the whole pile, stacked so high, and you have to kind of walk around them. So I guess that's part of the development process. Hopefully over time, once they will keep that under control. Okay, so this is another photo from the fashion show. This model is deaf and mute, and she has been with this clothing boutique for a couple of years now. And I have a chance to talk to the manager of the boutique, and it seems like they are very happy with the work of all these models over there. And all of these models are happy to have a chance to make a living by doing something they love. And behind her, it's actually it's a customer. She was just in the audience. This is a photo of mopeds in Hanoi. As you can see, there are a lot of numbers on the wall. Those are phone numbers of plumbers and repairmen and whatnot. It's basically for them, it's like a free billboard. So people really take advantage of all the space and all the, I guess, all the marketing opportunity they can get. The photo on the top is taken in an alley in Hanoi. As you can see, there is a bit of a European influence on the facade of the buildings. There was moped is a way of moped and motorbike. They are the way of transportation in Vietnam. It's in Hanoi. There are tons and tons of in the city of Hanoi. You can get on the street and we see like hundreds. You can see thousands of mopeds and motorbikes all day long.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Ning, for sharing your beautiful photographs with us and telling us a little bit of the history behind each one. Each one is very special and it means a lot. And thanks again for having your exhibition here at the Darkroom. This is the last day at the Darkroom, as we know, for your exhibit, and then we'll be moving it later today to Bin 46 right down the street. So people will be able to enjoy it there for a while as well. So
great. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for offering me this opportunity to do my first exhibition. I must say that I'm really grateful and I can't be happier.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Join us for a conversation about Vietnam with Ning Mosberger Tang and Chuck Forsman, a Vietnam veteran.
Hey, Chuck. Thank you for coming to my exhibition.
Ning, it's a real pleasure. I'm so pleased you asked me.
I understand that you are a Vietnam veteran and you also have been visiting Vietnam after the war for many, many times. And you spent quite some time in Vietnam, is that right?
Yes, 5 trips, but they were between a month and 4 months, so
wow.
It was a fair amount of time.
Pretty
between
extensive.
2000 and 2010.
Oh, okay.
So I'm missing it, and that's one reason I love this exhibit, because it kind of takes me back, but also somewhere more current and lets me look at Vietnam, and I want to go back again, and this is really a pleasure for me to see this. And they're wonderful photographs. They're just
Thank you very
striking.
much.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here. So
Thank you very much.
I thought I would just point at some and say some things that they make me think of.
Sure.
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
appreciate that, your feedback.
So, you know, this picture, and one with this one right here, these are all from Halong Bay.
That's right.
Which is a World Heritage Site. It's an extraordinary place.
Yes.
And I visited there a couple of times, but the time that I went that was most appealing to me, I bypassed it because there's another bay called Bai Tu Long, which tourists don't go to, which is north of there. And it's very much the same. But instead of getting on a tourist boat, my wife was with me at that time. We went on a ferry that the workers go on.
Okay.
So it was very different than this.
Yes.
You know, it was kind of rough, but it was a real pleasure and extraordinary to see it from the way the workers go over and experience it. But it is amazing that those spires just rise up out of the sea. They're so dramatic, and a lot of them see with tunnels and convolutions. But when you go inland, these are karst formations, and they're called karst. And inland, there are many of these that rise up on the land.
Oh, I actually did not see that.
Yes, yes. Much of North Vietnam, when you get in the mountains and areas, there are these extraordinary shapes, and they have a lot of tunnels, and they have stalactites that hang down, and of course the jungle foliage. So they're just very dramatic and exotic.
That's very
amazing
incredible.
to look at. I'm a landscape artist, so I really attracted to that.
Yeah, Vietnam has such a interesting landscape, and it's different from region to region. And I wish I could. I want to go back there and visit each of these areas for sure. Yeah.
Vietnam is shaped kind of like a dumbbell.
That's we have a picture here. Yeah.
Yeah, because the top part is large, surrounded by mountains, which have all this kind of frontier area, which are extremely rugged, but that define the distinction between Vietnam, because it's such a rugged border area. It helped repel the Chinese.
That's right.
And then there's the middle part, which is quite narrow, and then it expands out again at the bottom, and that's the Mekong Delta area. And it's very flat, and much of the time the sea comes in, and so much of the rivers there and the canals you can travel on, they're moving up and down and up and down, and some of the ports are only available for boats when the tide comes in, and then it comes out again. So many people live with water, just water, and it's part of their lives. And some of these, certainly around Halong Bay, but inland where they have these karsts, there are also areas that are flooded with rice fields and flooded also. So move across here.
Okay.
So I wanted to say just a word about Hue. That picture and that picture are from Hue, and this is near Hue. And I think they're really striking. For one thing, Hue is the old imperial capital of Vietnam. And a lot of the hearts of the Vietnamese kind of are there. A lot of Vietnamese are very drawn to Hue. But it's kind of dilapidated now. It has the worst weather in Vietnam. It's wet so much of the time. This is very characteristic of Hue. Yeah. The wind blows, and there's some of the poorest people are there, but some of the most educated. I think there are 5 universities.
And the high school.
This is very exclusive. So Hue has this very Tony quality, but it also has a lot of rough edges. And it has all the old imperial tombs, and it has this amazing wall. The citadel that goes around it with a moat around that. And then there are interior walls too. And at one time the imperial family was only behind, the last walls where only those people could go. And I have many memories from Hue. It's an extraordinary place.
There are a lot of tourists in Hue as well because of the imperial palace.
There is all the cities have their tourist areas, and there are the Tony tourist areas, and then there are the backpacker tourist areas, and then there are areas where tourists seldom go. And
that's the place I will know.
I'm drawn to the places where I will stay where the tourists are, because it's the backpacker areas, because it's cheaper, but it's more interesting to get away. But the Vietnamese are really open. Oftentimes, if you get away from tourist areas, they're very startled to see you. They don't know what you're doing there. One time in Hue, and this relates to the show back here, what's extraordinary about the people with problems because of Agent Orange. But I was walking just in a back area, just wandering and lost.
Right.
And I saw a man that looked just like me, same age, beard, and we didn't look like anyone else there, and I was like, what are you doing here? So we kind of engaged. It turned out that he has an orphanage that he finances, and it's his passion. And I visited that orphanage, and that's been gratifying to see because of what we have done to the country, but a lot of GIs feel compelled to do something. I love the man, and it was just extraordinary to see what he had done there.
Children of Vietnam was started by a Vietnam vet as well. Yeah, he returned to the country, and he just so touched and felt like he should do something about it. And that's how he started the whole nonprofit. Yeah.
I did a painting exhibit about Vietnam, and I'm working on a photo book, but part of the idea is to generate more reconciliation, to help people understand each other, because we're on the opposite sides of the planet.
Right.
We look very different.
Right.
We are very different.
Right.
But it's almost like we are a divorced couple that we have children, we have offspring. There's a legacy that's left.
Right.
So we have this connection, and it seems like Vietnamese and Americans, there's this undercurrent, almost a knot in your stomach. On the other hand, there's amazing kind of openness that I felt time and again, and it just, at times, it was just kind of overwhelming, and you would kind of break down. But
do you suggest other veterans to go back and visit Vietnam?
when Vietnamese would see me, apparently they see a number, and I was the right age, and I looked like it. So yeah, there is a number who do go, and I've always encouraged veterans to go. You have a catharsis, you know. It's a way that you can kind of. I mean, I remember the first time I went south, it was with my family in a train, and when we approached the DMZ, you know, the demilitarized zone to go into the south, and there were just all these anxieties because the soldier, I'd come up to that border, but I hadn't gone across. Oh. And then in the morning, when we got to Hanoi, I was greeted by this cosmopolitan, vibrant, friendly city, and all that just fell away. You know, it was just beautiful. So
do you feel like it's like a healing experience for you to actually
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, time and again. Yeah. First time I went was with my family, and then a number of trips subsequently. A picture or two. The pictures with the motorbikes. There are a number here. You cannot travel in Vietnam without seeing motorbikes. Most of my travels in Vietnam were on a motorbike. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but it's a cheap way to go. And when you're in rural areas, if you come in a car, people think you're an official or you're rich, and there's a distance. But if you arrive on a motorbike, they're very friendly and open, and it's fun. It's not only fun. Vietnam, for the most part, is very hot, and you get all sweaty, and then you get on your motorbike, and pretty soon you're dried out and cool, and you know, it's air conditioning. It's very nice.
I heard that motorbikes, they're like a status symbol there, right? If you can own a motorbike, then you're like, you know, like owning a Mercedes. If you have a moped, then you're like more normal, and a bike is like even lower level, right?
Very much so. In fact, they're they are connoisseurs. They really understand their motorbikes. And there are many different classes and kinds that they use, and there's a lot of status with certain kind of motorbikes. But if you're upper middle class, you will have one of the really nice ones, and it's only upper classes that have cars. But you know, motorbikes are really nicer to get around than cars, because in Hanoi, imagine, I mean, you can't get down the street because the motorbikes, a car, it's almost impossible. But there was one thing that you said. You said Vietnamese are very forward-thinking. And I love this photograph, by the way. It's just beautifully composed. It says so much. And if you look, you can see that 2 of the 3 motorbikes have rear view mirrors. And if it had been 10 years ago, there wouldn't have, or there might have been one of them with a rear view mirror, and before that, none. And you spoke about Vietnam being very forward-thinking. I think it's one of the most interesting things. I've driven in many countries in the world, and some you have to be paying attention to what's behind you as much as what's in front of you. In Vietnam, you're responsible for what's in front of you. And so I had to demand that they would put mirrors on the motorbikes when I would rent them. And it's a metaphor for how they are. They are very, very forward-thinking. But it has to do with their attitude about memory. Now, you're Chinese. And Vietnamese are very ambivalent about Chinese, as you know. Their history is repelling China, and then the influence of France and Russia, then us. But China has always been there, and they have a very strong tradition of learning, and so much of that comes from Mandarin Chinese. And there are many places that have pagodas that, or places where they have manuscripts that are very important and very beautiful. And so in that part, to Vietnamese, is important, looking back. The other part, which is very evident, I didn't see here, in almost all homes and businesses, they have shrines. They all practice ancestor worship.
But that came from China probably, but it's not there in China anymore because of the Cultural Revolution. But then I find them in Vietnam.
And it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous.
It's everywhere.
And it's very beautiful. And they're very unself-conscious about it. They pray to their ancestors. And they bring offerings. So when Vietnamese when they grow older, they gain in status. And when they die, they become deity.
Right.
It takes the edge off of aging. And I think people seem like men don't have as much of machismo. There's not much machismo in the men. They seem to be kind of satisfied with who they are, even though to us they're delicate, but they seem very, very comfortable in their manhood. But a lot of this has to do with what is important to remember. Certain things are terribly important to remember, but it's also just as important what to forget. And those, the mirrors are an example of that. They look forward.
Make that choice. What's more important for them to remember?
So that's, people go to Vietnam are struck by how resilient the culture is. Also how vibrant. And that's, if you go to Laos, it's very, very laid back and quiet. Vietnamese are going all the time. They just never sleep. Almost looks like they don't rest.
Exactly. I feel like the city of Hanoi was practically just buzzing all the time, right? People always doing something, going somewhere. Yeah, very
Saigon is even more so.
Oh, okay. Well, that's next place.
Next time.
Next place.
Yeah. Is there another picture you would like me to? Oh, I would just mention. You mentioned the pollutants.
Yes.
Yeah. Now it's really interesting. You have this picture right here, because these women, are kind of bare-legged, and you only see that in the cities. To us, most Vietnamese are almost prudish. They on the beach. Many beaches they cover up.
If you look at that woman there, right, from countryside, she's like dressed. Yes. It was very hot at the time, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're right about the pollution. But the women also want to stay very light skinned.
Oh, I see.
So they cover up from the sun,
right,
the dust, and the pollution. So, and I did the same thing. I would put a mask on when I was out, but mostly for the dust and pollution.
Yeah.
So there are many reasons why they do. But it's very striking how. Most women you see on the street or on the motorbikes are really covered up.
Yes.
And then once in a while in the city you'll see women who aren't so covered up.
That's interesting.
Is there anything here you wanted me to comment on? Or
no, it's really, you drive that. I mean, if you see anything that's interesting to you, then, because you have so much experience in Vietnam.
Too much experience.
That's great. No. I love to hear even more about the photos, because I don't know Vietnam as much as I would like to. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going back, and I know you will too.
Yeah, I feel like Vietnam is one place that kind of gets under your skin.
It does.
Right? You go there, and then you don't ever leave. You can leave, but then you feel like a part of you get left there, right? I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's how I feel. Yeah.
I'm a veteran, and I hated the war.
Right.
But I was so curious about Vietnam, so being able to go back, I've been able to kind of indulge my curiosity and look, and I just never could get enough. But when I was there, I was amazed by how the people there were able to maintain their dignity, and they just had this resilience that was amazing under the most degrading circumstances. So.
Yeah, like look at this woman, right? I think that what really struck me was that she has so much dignity in her, in such it looks like a rundown situation, deteriorating, all that, but she has her dignity. She's standing tall, and she's dressed up, very very nicely.
Yes.
Yeah. And just in her daily life, she's carrying on like that. So I thought that's very impressive.
And that's something that's very much a part of that culture.
Yeah.
One thing that isn't so comfortable, you mentioned the environment. They aren't very conscientious about keeping things clean. But I think they're learning. Maybe there's a little bit of consciousness taking place, because I remember a friend I traveled with a lot there who's Vietnamese, and you have to be kind of careful what you say about the country. You're a guest. But at one point, I just couldn't help it. I said, "Why are you trashing out your country like this? Why don't you do this?" And he acted very embarrassed. But in traveling in other countries, you can see there will be areas where they do keep it clean, other areas where they don't. And it really has to do with how people get trained and start paying attention. And that needs to happen more there, I think.
Yeah, I hope so.
I don't want to leave on a down note.
The environment. No, it's fine. Just up and down with everything. I mean, to me, Vietnam is like, like an onion, right? The more you peel it, the more it seems to, more interesting it gets,
yeah,
right? The layers and layers and layers. So I mean, it's good not to stay just on the surface. It's okay to go down,
That's a beautiful way to finish. Yeah. Why don't we stop there?
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck, for coming by, and thank you for giving me more information about what's behind these photos. I really appreciate that.
I'm honored that you invited me, and I came with my wife. It was a wonderful experience, so I'm happy to give something back. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to my show. I hope you have enjoyed. Goodbye.